Since the beginning of time, there have been stories. Stories told in order to teach the highest and most valuable truths one has come to understand. So join me on an epic journey to hear those stories and discover the truth behind them. This is the Mythlore cast. Of all things, there is no beginning, for he has always been, and he is. But I will tell you of the beginning of my world. It is called Adarha, land of fire and ice, burning and freezing. It is a very dark and difficult world, yet also bright and beautiful, full of many wonders that are yet dark and dangerous. That is the eternal wisdom of the great creator of all things, but never of a thing without two sides. Two sides that are completely opposite as it would seem in our ways, yet they make up one world, one creation of which all others come. The great creator who I dare fear to name, for he is far beyond my understanding, I shall refer to him as Akole, meaning great one, in the tongues of old. I call him the great creator, for he is above the others whom he created for the purpose of carrying out his will and creating worlds. They are creators as well, and so are you and I in our own way. He has many names in this world, but I believe they all reflect the same being that I don't understand. Some may name him, but I dare not beyond the name Akole, for there may be, of the little I understand, much more to be added to that, and with new understanding comes new and greater meaning. So again I say, Akole, great one. All creators are outside of what they create, yet everything they are is put into their creation, and that is all I can truly say of him that I know for certain. Before he spoke, there was naught but darkness and void, and formlessness, and in that there was absence of light. Darkness much darker than you can ever imagine, and that darkness was called Umbraeoth. It was a force that fought against Akole, and there was a great struggle that rang out in the heavens. It sounded like a great thunderstorm rumbling in the distance. How long the struggle lasted I cannot tell you, but it was a great struggle. But Akole had what Umbraeoth did not, a voice, and he spoke into the void, Umbraeoth, and with it his light shone into the void, and there came into form a vast expanse of light, a great kingdom of light, and Akole prevailed against Umbraeoth, and the darkness fled as far as it could from the light, until it was outside where the light could reach, which was very far. Then Umbraeoth still dwelt, and tried at times to push back against the light, but could not get very far. He could only reach into the bounds of light with little arms, never reaching very far. Akole spoke again, and made beings of the light, the Adradari, warriors of light, and he gave them the light to expand it as far as they could go, even to the farthest reaches of the kingdom where Umbraeoth dwelt, taking the light there and pushing him back further and further, ever expanding. All right. Well, now this is the part of the show that is a little bit more chill and less produced and edited. I hope you enjoyed listening to that. I wanted to kind of put the the main piece of content before we get into the show and I introduce myself. This is the first episode of the Mythlore cast. My name is AJ. I actually already started this podcast and it was a little bit different, but I decided to change the format. So if you're an early listener, those episodes now are only available on the Patreon. But I'm going to get into that in a minute. Just a quick introduction. My name is AJ. This podcast is part of the Fire ADO podcast, which is basically a network of podcasts I've started producing myself. And it all kind of stems from my solo heavy metal project called Fire from Heaven. With that, basically, I'm not an artist who only posts about tour dates or album releases on my Facebook pages. I do a lot of stuff. I talk a lot about a lot of stuff. It's all kind of centered around mythology and fantasy and the mix of that and heavy metal. My heavy metal project, I do a lot of storytelling, but you're obviously not here to listen to that. If you want to check out Fire from Heaven, please do so. I have 5 albums and 2 in the works right now. But anyways, this is the Mythlore cast where we're doing sort of a fun thing where we're sort of telling the story a little bit, and then we're going to talk about the story a little bit, and then we're going to talk about the story a little bit more in the bonus episodes for the Patreon page. So there's going to be a lot here, and yeah, so that was a quick introduction, and I go by AJ on the internet, or AJ the Metalhead, for obvious reasons. I make heavy metal. So I think that's really all I need to do for the introductions. I don't really have any social media pages for this podcast other than the Patreon page. So if you like what I'm doing here and want to help support the project, you can do so on Patreon at patreon.com/themythlorecast. So yeah, there's going to be bonus episodes where I go a little bit deeper on just my thoughts on the story that I'm talking about, sort of the ideas and the truths behind it, like I say in the intro to the show. So that's basically what I do on the Patreon. And there's going to be like the early episodes on there as like a little bit of a back catalog, but those are kind of like me figuring out what I'm going to do with this show. So they're not the greatest quality or anything. And yeah, so let's get into the story now. So this is actually a story I'm working on. I have a fantasy world I'm currently building, and I'm working on the first book called The Evil Wolf Chronicles. And that's sort of like a separate project I'm doing, sort of like the beginning of this, where it's like sort of like a reading, but there's gonna be voice acting and stuff like that. So I'm working on an audiobook version of that. You can check out the first episode of that on Spotify or wherever you're listening. The Evil Wolf Chronicles. But anyways, that's basically what this first episode is about, and I'm doing this basically because it's sort of like a one-off episode, and then we're going to get into a series on the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, and that's sort of the mythology I'm most familiar with. I know it's also like a fantasy and stuff, but it's a modern mythology, you know what I mean? And even Tolkien, when he went in, talked about it, he was trying to sort of create a mythology. But anyways, we'll get into that in the next episode. Right now, this is sort of like a one-off episode that I thought I'd do for fun, and just to share a little bit of other things that I do. So this is sort of like, I have the book The Evil Wolf Chronicles I'm working on, and then I have like a sort of like a lore book, sort of what will be kind of like what the Silmarillion is for Tolkien's world. It's kind of like a similar idea, sort of like a creation story and stuff like that. So enough jibber jabber. Let's get into the actual story. And basically how I'm going to format these is I sort of do the reading at the beginning, and then I'll kind of tell a little bit of the story, sort of describe a little bit more of what's going on here if you didn't really understand it. So there'll be a lot more to talk about when we get to Tolkien, because there's a lot there. But anyways, this is sort of like I said, it's like a creation story of this world I'm building. And so basically we have like this beginning, right? How a lot of people think like things were at one point. There was basically nothing. Basically, there is this character, Akole. Well, there's sort of like a little bit of a narration, description, and stuff at the beginning, and then we get into like Akole. So there is Akole, and that means great one or great creator. And he's basically outside of this void that is called Umbreoth. And he's, like I say, he's outside of it, and he's looking down into this like empty, dark void that is lacking his light, that is lacking his creation, basically. And he basically decides that he's going to fill the void, to bring light to the darkness. So he begins to struggle with this void. It sounds weird and hard to picture, but it's like, picture like basically two universes clashing. One that is completely light and one that is completely dark. It's like a clashing of what's the word? Realities, or clashing of, I can't think of the word. Clashing of universes. One light, one dark. Basically, the mission is the light is trying to break into the darkness. The light is trying to basically take over this other universe, in a sense. Not for like some sort of evil, vain reason. It's simply like this other universe is empty and doesn't have anything. He's like, well, that is filled, right? So he's basically the god of this world. He's a transcendent god. He's outside of this void that he's speaking into, which becomes his creation. So he's outside of it, but he'll also, as you'll see, in and through it. So basically there's this great struggle, and who knows how long it goes on. I kind of just like leave that up to the imagination of the listener. It goes on a great while. And it's just an epic struggle of light and dark. And basically Akole prevails because he has what he has, basically everything that Umbreoth lacks, because Umbreoth isn't anything in itself. It's more of an absence of things. It's an absence of worlds within its universe. It's an absence of light. It's an absence of everything, basically. It's an absence of Akole. So he's like, I'm going to speak into this and make it more than it is. So like I say, again, it's not an evil intent. He's not trying to destroy this other universe. He's trying to make it more than it is. And Umbreoth is, I sort of characterize him, but it's not necessarily really any sort of character like Akole is. It's just sort of like a force. And I'm going to actually go deeper into that on the bonus episode, and sort of like what this kind of picturing here, this struggle of Akole against Umbreoth. I'll just give a a quick, just a sort of like a teaser of what I'll talk about, which is basically the artist before the blank canvas. And that's all I'll say about it. So Akole speaks into this void, and it's like basically like light projecting from his mouth, and light projecting from his mouth as he speaks, and it just like picture is just like a stream of light breaking into the other universe, breaking into the void, and just boom, there's just like a final sort of explosion that basically lightens Umbreoth. Not all of it, but there is like a seed of Akole now in Umbreoth, which probably sounds so weird now that I think about saying it like that. Some people might think it weird, others may not. Depends on how you think. But anyways, it's this seed of light planted like at the center of Umbreoth, if you will. And there is basically the beginnings of many worlds. And that first kingdom is Kingdom of Light. It's called Adradar, which I don't know if I go into the description of that really in the beginning. And of that, there are also these people he create to inhabit that, called the Adradari, which are basically his warriors, his followers that are there to move his work forward and expand the light all across Umbreoth, all across the void, to take the light to the deepest, darkest parts that are still full of emptiness, where the light doesn't reach. And the light reaches far. But it's not all consuming of Umbreoth, and it never will be, but that's the mission. But Umbreoth is sort of an ever-expanding universe as well. So that is basically like a summary of what's going on here. You know, it's this transcendent God speaking into this empty universe and making light and a world. And the Adradari are capable sort of sub-creators that will continue the creation of worlds after that. And there's more to the story. And like I say, these are going to be one-off episodes. I'll be going through actual mythologies as series. So there'll be sort of like one-off episodes once in a while of this story. So stay tuned for more of that. But this is going to be sort of the conclusion to this episode. So again, if you enjoy this podcast and want to help support its creation, that is very much appreciated. Join the Patreon. There are a few different tiers, and two of the tiers you get the bonus episodes. So yeah, I appreciate any support. And like I say also, that is really the only call to action I have. I don't have a social media or anything for this page other than the Patreon. So I'll be having, public posts that are free for everyone to see, even not patrons. But then also lots and lots of exclusive stuff for patrons. So go and check that out, including a bonus episode to this episode. Check that out. Join me there. I'd love to get to know you and chat with you and answer any questions you might have about this story. And like I say, next episode we're getting into the Silmarillion. Or we're not getting into it, but we're going to do like a sort of introduction to it and to Tolkien. So, thank you for joining me, and I will see you later.